What's going on, everybody? We got another pivotal segment here where I'm going to be interviewing a person of the industry that I have gotten to know over the years. I appreciate any information that they ever have given to me, and I don't want to hold those resources close to my chest. I want to give those to the industry as a whole. My goal is, by bringing on these experts, these people that know this stuff better than anybody else in the world, that you guys will be able to apply some of this in your business. So I actually have Jay Manfre, the General Counsel here at Redcon 1, and I've known Jay now for a couple years. I think 2 years. So I'm going to actually let him kind of give you a sense of like what his background is, because I think it's unique, and I think it's also just a good story overall for people to understand that there's actually some lawyers that work in this space. There's people that actually are paying attention to regulatory, legal, all the things that the industry, the supplement industry as a whole, unfortunately gets a lot of like a bad rap over. Jay is one of the guys that's paying attention to the fastest, one day maybe the biggest supplement company in the world. He's kind of got their back. He's got Aaron Sigmund's back, and kind of paying attention to a lot of the stuff that maybe a lot of supplement industry members are not necessarily paying attention to. But we're going to dive into a few of those topics here, but I'm going to let Jay kind of talk about his path to Redcon 1 and how he's kind of gotten into all this.
Sure, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it. So yeah, like you said, I'm a lawyer. I get to wear a short sleeve polo and shorts to work now, which is a great perk. So I'm very grateful for that. So I started off in law school in New York City. I went to school. I lived in Manhattan for 3 years, and after my first year, so the first year, the school schedules your classes for you. So you don't get to pick what classes you take. You have a base level of constitutional law, contracts, criminal law, all the basics, and you don't choose what time you go to class, what days you go to class. And the whole time I was very into bodybuilding, working out, the supplement industry. I've been a consumer of supplements since I turned probably 16 and was playing football in high school, and started off with whey protein and a multivitamin, and then scaled up to pre-workouts and pump products and things to help me get bigger, stronger, and faster. So I was working out in law school, and then the second year rolled around. I made law review, which top 15% of your class, you get to go on to the publishing side of law school with professors and other experts. And I scheduled all my classes to be on Tuesday and Thursday so that I could go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday without having to worry about going to class and bringing my meals, so I could spend the whole day working out and enjoying my passion. And obviously law is a passion of mine too, and it's not just a career for me, and being able to combine these two things together is the ultimate dream. So you asked where I started off in the industry. After law school, I did personal injury, car accidents, slip and falls, did that for a year. And then I moved on to Rick Collins' law firm, Collins, Gann, McCluskey, and Barry. It's a law firm based on Long Island that specializes in dietary supplement and steroid law. And if you're familiar with the industry at all, you're definitely familiar with Rick Collins.
Yeah, shout out to Rick Collins if you're listening to this one.
So I came into the firm, and they offered me an opportunity, and I got to learn from the best in the business. I also got to learn from his longtime partner, Alan Feldstein, who's been in the industry for 30 years and has significant experience in advertising and marketing law. He actually went up against FDA when they banned ephedra.
Okay.
So he's top notch. Rick's top notch, and I appreciate the opportunity that they gave to me to make an introduction into the industry, learn from the best, and grow. And then through working at Rick's office, I was able to develop relationships, and one of my close friends is Juan and Karen Morell.
Okay.
And Juan just won the Japan Pro, so shout out to him. He's a great competitor. And they introduced me to Aaron, and I reached out to him because he said I could text him. So I remember I was all nervous to text him, and I was like, oh my God, what do I say? I shot him a text, and I said, if you ever need help with any legal stuff, trademarks, contract, you have an athlete that you're signing and you need someone to review it, I would appreciate the chance to show you that I can perform better than any lawyer that you're currently using, be more responsive, faster, and more detailed. He gave me a shot on a trademark thing, a small trademark response. I ended up winning that for him and getting him the trademark. And after that, he transitioned all the trademarks to the firm that I was at with Rick. And we carried on like that. I met Aaron at Supply Side West for the first time, and asked him how the company was doing, and I knew it was growing fast. And I told him, if you ever get to the point where you need an in-house attorney, please let me know. He said, all right, buddy, I'll keep you in mind, and then went on and did his thing. And then it actually, on Thanksgiving, so we're right around Thanksgiving right now, tomorrow, Aaron was taking a tour of his new facility that he was going to buy, not this one, but a different one that he had in mind, and one of the doors said General Counsel on it. So I DM'd him and I said, oh, that has a nice ring to it. And this was like 2 months after our first conversation at Supply Side West, and he said, would you move to Boca? And I said, if it meant working for you, then yes. He asked me what I would take to start off, told me about the growth opportunity here, and then how I could, move up in the company. And I guess you can't really move up from lawyer, but grow as in my career and earning potential. And my wife and I came down here in December of last year, visited, and immediately knew that this was the right place for me. So we moved down from Long Island almost a year ago, and it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, just weather in itself is great.
Yeah. Right now I'm missing 30-degree and below temperatures and snow, but obviously you've been here for a few days, and Florida weather, you can't beat it. It's perfect.
Yeah, great. So I wanted to, and Jay and I talked about, how we could bring some of his knowledge to my audience. And one of the things that we kind of stumbled on was that a lot of supplement companies that start up, small supplement companies, they miss a lot of the things that could get them in trouble from maybe a legal, regulatory, sometimes with maybe like the FDA or maybe the FTC. And we started to kind of think about, are there some areas that he had kind of consistently seen maybe supplement companies miss on, and wanted to kind of highlight some of those. I think you got 5 of them there, so we're going to highlight some of those. Hopefully you guys get some value out of this. So what's the first one that you had on there?
So of course I have to give a legal explanation in the beginning that this isn't legal advice. This is for educational purposes. You should always consult with an attorney before you decide to make any business or regulatory decision. But just for educational purposes, to help your viewers and hopefully add a little bit of value. One of the things that is probably the most important is adverse event reporting. You said in the beginning that the industry gets a bad rap sometimes for not being regulated, or you'll hear in news articles that dietary supplements are an unregulated industry, and it couldn't be further from the truth. You mentioned 2 agencies that directly oversee dietary supplements and foods, and that's the FDA and the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. And the FDA is responsible for the safety of the products mainly. They also deal with some advertising components of it, but their main focus is safety. So adverse events are any event associated with the use of a dietary supplement that is adverse in terms of health. So if a customer takes a pre-workout and says that they had a tummy ache, that may seem like nothing to the average gym goer, and most likely it isn't a big deal. But under the FDA regulations, it's considered an adverse event. So the FDA requires of companies that they have written procedures in place to monitor incoming complaints from consumers, log those complaints, follow up with the consumer to gather minimal elements, the name of the customer, the type of product they took, what their adverse event or reaction was. Did they go to the hospital? Did they go to the doctors? Did they have to take any medication? So you need to obtain some data from these customers. It's not just customer service in the sense of, oh, you didn't like this product, I'm going to give you a refund or an exchange. It's a step further than that. It's obtaining, logging, having the procedures in place, also making sure that your customer service team is trained to spot these issues. So that example that we used, someone with a bellyache, that may not spark an adverse event in the mind of a customer service person. They may just see this as, oh, the person, has a sensitive stomach, and that could be true. But if they're trained to look for these things, then you'll be in a better spot as a company. And knowing when you need to report these to the FDA. If they rise to the level of serious adverse events, you have a requirement to report them to the FDA within 15 business days. So as soon as you receive it, the clock is ticking. You have a time limit. You have to get that information to them. You have to follow up with the customer and then report, if necessary, to the FDA. And it's probably the most crucial thing that, as a brand, if you're not manufacturing the products yourself, if you're just a brand with a warehouse that's distributing products, that's probably your number one most important regulatory requirement.
And how long do you have to keep those?
6 years.
6 years. So basically, it's similar to, if you think about it in the sense of like your taxes. I mean, you have to keep those for, I don't remember how much on the corporate side, but you have to keep it for a certain amount of years before you can dispose of those records. It's kind of the same way here, because you just never know. 4 or 5 years from now, somebody needs to pull something because there's maybe a sequence that comes up that just maybe came from a long time ago.
Sure.
You never know what they're going to need to pull. What about kind of second one that you had on your list that you think?
So the second one is understanding the difference between permissible claims for dietary supplements and claims that would be permissible for a product like a drug or another consumable product that isn't in the category of dietary supplements. So dietary supplements are permitted to make structure function claims if you have adequate substantiation to support those claims. So if you have the scientific evidence to support the claims, that's step one. You need to have the science behind it. You need to do the research and see if your product is supported under that level of substantiation. And that's an FTC, mainly the FTC issue. The FDA comes in and looks at claims as well. But as far as substantiation goes, FTC is usually the main regulatory agency in charge of that. Whether or not it's a structure function claim or what the FDA refers to as disease claim is something that takes a little bit of skill to understand the difference of, and that's why I recommend consulting with an attorney before you slap just any claim on your label. But dietary supplements, you see on the FDA disclaimer, can't be promoted in any manner to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. So there are some tricky ones that you wouldn't expect to be a disease in the eye of the FDA, but it happens they consider it to be one. Inflammation is one of those tricky claims. So inflammation can be a normal response to exercise. It could also be a signifier of cancer or digestive problems or ulcerative colitis. It could be both. So tailoring your claims appropriately, that would be understanding the regulations and the guidance from the FDA on what is a structure function claim and what's a disease claim is something that every company should start off with. And there's guidance documents available on FDA's website, so it's available.
This is maybe a question that you might know, or maybe it's just a feeling from what you've seen from your side, but usually in the supplement industry, at least from my perspective, is you have one of two things that usually get, you see the lawsuits or you see the press clippings that kind of happen. It's one around product claims, kind of what we're talking about here. And then the other one is around not meeting appropriate, levels of whatever that ingredient is. Like it's not meeting
Sure.
the claim in terms of the, like it says 25 grams of protein. It doesn't have 25 grams of protein because somebody had sent stuff to a lab. Do you know, like is there one that you see more than the other, or is it usually around 50-50? Because those are the ones, at least that I see, that happen more times than not.
Yeah, I would say that they're both common. It depends on whether you're talking about regulatory enforcement or
just
a
like
civil
kind of like class action
lawsuit.
things, yeah.
I would say that class action lawsuits are pretty common when an ingredient isn't up to the level stated on the product, but claims also fall into that category of class action kind of bait. So,
and you actually, you probably see more from the civil side because it's people maybe are just, I don't want to say preying, but maybe just like they're looking for things maybe more aggressively than an FDA or an FTC that have not the resources that they need a lot of times. So,
sure.
There's, I guess you're seeing the private, lawyers or something coming after it. At least I see it more aggressively, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, so it's like enforcement through litigation.
Yeah.
So, and everybody has their opinion on it. Obviously, as the attorney for a company, class action lawsuits are not a great thing.
Yeah.
But, they do have their place in benefiting consumers and weeding out those who otherwise would go unchecked. So that they have their place. And I agree with your statement that traditionally these agencies are underfunded and understaffed. So it's impossible to get to every brand and monitor every single movement. So.
And kind of in a similar sense, one of the things that we're going to talk about next is something that I see a lot of maybe misunderstanding in terms of even clients that I work with is that, with social media and being that social media, sometimes there's not a lot of filter, only, coming from people running the corporate social media accounts, maybe website blogs or whatever the communication that is, maybe not on your product label, but just the social media side of it. You maybe have even owners sometimes that just are firing off. Aaron Singerman's always firing off, things constantly. So it's like, what's the stance around the things you just talked about, but from a social media standpoint, or just anything that's outside of maybe like the static labels that I think everybody is always super aware of? I think there's this other side that maybe is a little bit even more of an issue, I think.
Sure. So a common misconception is that marketing in terms of dietary supplements and claims are what's stated on the label, and you can filter your marketing through the website, through blogs, through social media without risking any sort of enforcement. So if you wouldn't say it, I guess this is our third tip, if you wouldn't say it on your label, you shouldn't say it on your social media, on your website, on blogs. So I see it more often in blogs that are tied to the sale of products. If you're talking about the effect of CoQ10 on preventing heart attacks in a blog, and you happen to sell CoQ10, then that claim about preventing heart disease or heart attacks is imputed onto your product sale because it's on the same website that you sell that product. So although you're not saying my product CoQ10 prevents heart attacks, the implied claim is that you're promoting the fact that it can do such, and you sell this product that contains it. So I would say be careful with what you put out there on blogs and social media.
Yeah, it's interesting because the one really great benefit of having the ability to have digital marketing, websites, social media, and all those types of things is that you can tell a lot more on those things than your label. That's usually a lot smaller. You have the ability to storytell, and you have the ability to educate your consumers on your products, and you tend to get sometimes a little bit more aggressive than you should. So this is like a super big tip, I think, for people to pay attention to, because though you might be able to say a ton more, you still need to be held to the same standard of your product labels. You need to be taking that into consideration, because if you don't, you're opening yourself up to possible litigation or possible issues with regulatory agencies. What do we got for the fourth one?
So fourth tip may seem kind of like a no-brainer, trademarks. So if you come up with a name of a company, you want to run a trademark search. Again, you could hire a law firm to do it. If you have some knowledge of how to search for trademarks, you may be able to get by, but the United States Patent and Trademark Office is a little tricky with their website and search terms, so it's always best to have a thorough search. But you want to make sure of two things. One, you don't want to infringe on someone else's trademark. And two, you want to make sure that you're able to obtain this trademark for yourself in the category that you're looking to sell products in. So for dietary supplements, it's class 005 on the Patent and Trademark Office website. And if you're looking to sell on Amazon, you're going to want to have a registered trademark, because that's the only way right now that Amazon allows you to register your brand and control your pricing in your store and have an Amazon store is through a registered trademark. I think they should probably update so that you could have another way to do it, but in their eyes, that's the way to secure it.
I have kind of two questions that I think are interesting to me. Is that I always get questions around, like, when should I file a trademark? Like, I'm still just starting out, or maybe I'm selling $250,000 worth of product right now.
Sure.
Should I go get a trademark? Like, is this something that somebody should invest some of their budget in right off the bat, or should it be something where they see how things are selling, like, in your opinion?
So you should do it, in my opinion, before you sell your first product. If the name is not available or someone else owns that name, you're setting yourself up for a future cease and desist or a lawsuit. The cost to file a trademark is $250, and that's if you did it yourself. Obviously, there's legal fees, and if you want to file in multiple classes, let's say you have clothing, and then you also have the supplements, and then you also have protein bars, so you need different classes. It's $250 per class. So for a relatively small amount of money, you're saving yourself a big headache in the future.
And then the second question, and one that I think is generally misunderstood, this isn't anything specific to the supplement industry, but I've seen this happen a ton of different times, is that a lot of times people think that by filing a trademark in the US that they're covered globally. And this might not be something that a very small brand needs to focus on, but any brand that is expecting to sell internationally in some sense needs to at least consider this. Explain a little bit about how that works from an international standpoint.
Sure. So foreign trademarks are its own beast. I typically work with an outside law firm to file trademarks in other countries, but like you said, you may have the trademark in the United States, but that doesn't mean that a company in Australia doesn't have that same trademark, and if you sell the product there, they're going to send you a cease and desist or file a lawsuit. So I think basing the decision for a name in the beginning should, if you're a U.S. brand, make sure you have the U.S. trademark, and then go to the foreign countries and seek trademarks there if and when you get to that level. They're not cheap. You need to go through an agent or another law firm over there, and they typically have higher fees associated with them. So you want to make sure that it's definitely worth it. But yeah, a trademark in the United States is not going to protect you internationally. Another thing to keep in mind is when you file a trademark in the US, you have the ability to attach that filing to and claim priority in other countries to that date that you filed in the US. So you have like a period of, I think, 6 months to a year. Okay. You have to check me on that. But basically saying that I filed in the US on this date, and then you decide to file 4 months down the road in Mexico, instead of it being that date that you filed 4 months down the line, you could basically push it back to the date that you filed in the US. So filing in the US sometimes is a good launching point for filing in other countries.
And then another last one, I think this is one that I think both of us are super kind of passionate to share the information on, is around a key part of the supplement industry, or a lot of just consumer packaged good industries, is around like manufacturing. A lot of times the vast majority of people in the industry do not self-manufacture their own products. So they're working with some aspect of a co-packer, contract manufacturer. There's some agreement where a key part, arguably one of the most key parts of the business, the actual product, is getting handled by some third party. Explain a little bit around like maybe the manufacturing agreements, things that people are missing.
Yeah, so manufacturing agreement, I think, is one of those things that you want to get done sooner rather than later. When you're in the process of figuring out which manufacturer to use, it's one of the questions to ask. Do you have a manufacturing agreement? Are you willing to enter into one? If they're hesitant, I got this from Alan Feldstein. It's like dating a girl and then you're thinking about marrying her and you ask her about a prenup. If they're unwilling to entertain it, then maybe it's not the right person. Same thing with the manufacturing agreement. If they're not willing to enter into an agreement, it may be a red flag. And the importance of a manufacturing agreement, one, you want to make sure that you own your formulas. So if you're having someone else create your product, they may try later on when you become successful to say, we made that product, that's our formula. And then if you wanted to go to a different manufacturer in the future, maybe you can't take that formula with you. Also, lead times, making sure that products are being delivered to you on time. If you need your product within 4 weeks, but the manufacturer needs 6 weeks lead time, you're not getting it for 10. So you want to make sure you're on the same page. It's a lot about communication and making sure that you each understand the business relationship. And pricing, securing labels and packaging, whose responsibility is it, paying for shipping, all these things can be problems down the road, but they're easily prevented by a simple manufacturing agreement.
So do you think, in your opinion, is this something that you should always do before, even if you're a very small startup, or is it something where, after you get some kind of cadence with the manufacturer, you can kind of roll one in when you feel a little bit better about it? I mean,
sure.
I guess there's so many things probably to think about that, because a lot of, the key part around, owning your formula, or owning your flavor systems, or whatever that is, you'd have to obviously have that before you started R&D.
Yeah, and it's never too late to introduce a manufacturing agreement. I mean, you can always go back in when you feel more comfortable. I recommend having it in the beginning. This way, the relationship is clear from the start, and it's all laid out.
Yeah.
I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to say contracts are always great. But as long as both parties understand the relationship, I think you're in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think contracts are one of those things where a lot of people feel awkward putting those in place, especially in an industry like the supplement industry, where it's very kind of friendly in the sense of business, that a lot of things get done maybe not with a strict kind of rules or paper trails. A lot of it's like buddy agreements, gentlemen's agreements, which to Jay's point, it's okay at the beginning, but what happens when all of a sudden you are $100 million brand, like Redcon One, where somebody will want to strong arm you in certain ways, or create some type of difficult situation for them to continue with their business if something maybe sours, or you never know what could kind of happen. So without having those black and white terms in there, it's hard for you then to go back and go against somebody's agreement, shaking their hand, or just
Sure.
a verbal agreement, or whatever it is. You said this, I said this type of situation. So it's regardless of how awkward it is to kind of create that professional relationship off the bat, it's business 101. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's.
I think you'll find that more people believe that it'll be awkward.
Yeah.
But once you bring it up, it's
Yeah.
pretty standard. It's part of any business relationship.
Yeah.
So.
Is there anything that we missed, or anything that you
No,
think, I hope you, I'm going to say this, I think a lot of times people think about legal, or they think about accounting, or they think about any of these types of like super professional parts of the business. It's not obviously the good-looking chicks at a industry show or the marketing or something flashy like that, but this is what separates you as like a real strong, sustainable business. This is the stuff that's like, to me, is the most important. It might not be the most exciting, in the terms of like what you wake up each day and want to go do, but this is what separates like the men from the boys, I guess, in a way. Like if you have this stuff and you actually are, you either employ the right people, or you go out there and find the right people to do these things, or you are a practitioner yourself that does these things yourself. This is what separates everything. So I want to thank Jay for his time. I want to thank you guys for listening. If you guys have any questions specifically around this topic, or maybe you have like some other kind of ideas, either I'll be able to answer it, or I'll try to see if I can get some extra time from Jay if something interesting kind of comes up and he can answer it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help support me, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on this video. If this is the first time you've been introduced to my videos, would love for you guys to be a part of my community by subscribing to my channel. I upload several videos just like this weekly. And if you guys want to connect further outside of this platform, I do include all of my social media links down below. I just want to thank you guys again for your time. Hopefully I gave you some value in return, and we'll see you guys on the next video.